Story 1. Like most people here, I have an education, specifically an engineering degree. Story 2. I experienced childhood homelessness and then grew up in deep poverty. It was not a clear path out. I initially went to college, fully paid for by loans and any grant money I could obtain, but I was quickly overwhelmed by poor money management and bills, so I had to get a job while I was in school. The job quickly took priority, and I dropped out. I eventually grew fed up with the jobs I had to take, and after seeing so many older women in my workplace who were unable to retire, I returned to school. I graduated and applied to graduate school. Between my undergraduate and graduate programs, I left an abusive relationship and took a year to focus on my physical, mental, and emotional health. You cannot achieve anything if you think you are worthless. I finished graduate school, applied to ambitious organizations, and networked relentlessly. I landed a job right out of graduate school at a Big Four consulting firm and have been there ever since. I met my husband in graduate school. He had a much better upbringing and knew to choose a new construction home in an area with United States Department of Agriculture loans that required no down payment. We were able to secure a low interest rate during the coronavirus pandemic, and here we are. It took absolute grit and, at times, a complete delusion about what was possible to get here. I take every opportunity one can to help others who are trying to improve their situations. Story 3. I moved away and obtained an education while working to support myself. I worked in the oil field 70 to 100 hours a week for 11 years. I quit, started a family, and have worked closer to regular hours for the last 6 years. The opportunity is there for everyone. We just do not all start at the same level. Story 4. After 20 years working in minimum wage retail, I was laid off during the coronavirus disease 2019 lockdowns and enrolled in a code boot camp. 8 months later, I obtained my first developer job. I went from making $40,000 a year to $165,000 in 4 years. I am not sure that window is still open. The developer job market is so tough now that many boot camps are shutting down. Story 5. I got a good education. I went to public school, paid attention, and studied. I didn't get into trouble like many of my peers when I was young. I put myself through college by working, which left little time for a social life. Story 6. Getting a degree, managing my money better than my parents did, and changing jobs frequently. Story 7. Growing up, my parents divorced when I was 6, and I was the youngest of 5. My father did not help, so we were evicted and spent time homeless. We ended up in a low-income neighborhood for 12 years, and I was treated poorly at school because of where I lived. I worked in fast food and grocery jobs. I was lucky to get a starter professional job in my mid-20s because a friend's father thought I would be a good fit and intelligent enough to thrive in an entry-level position. I decided to finish my degrees. I landed a job in cybersecurity because of my broad information technology knowledge and some experience with firewalls and intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems. Then I landed a well-paying consultant job that turned into full-time employment, and I have been there for 6 years. My house needs work, but it is in a great, family-friendly neighborhood. I am doing for my children what was not done for me by my father. Story 8. I grew up living in the projects and spent 1 year in a trailer park. I had almost no money. I earned a full scholarship to a university in my city but ultimately dropped out. I took public transportation to school and worked cash jobs doing demolition and cleaning office buildings with my grandparents. I dropped out when my wife and I were expecting a child and obtained a commercial driver's license. I drove for about 2 years before starting my own trucking business. I have been running it for almost 8 years. My house is paid off. I own a couple of cars, 25 commercial trucks, and various tools, trailers, parts, and a company truck. The main thing is consistency and choosing a path. I left school to become a truck driver, learned what I could, and made sure I showed up every day and gave it my best. I did it for myself to earn and learn everything I could, and then start my own business. There have been many ups and downs, good years and bad. Make a plan, even a rough one, learn what you can, and do not be afraid to take some risk or seize an opportunity. If you work at the same level as everyone else, you will be the same as everyone else. Note: I am not the best writer. Story 9. I did not get pregnant like most of my family, and that made all the difference. As for education, I am good at blending in, passing classes, mirroring, and I have good instincts for latching onto the right people. Story 10. I got really lucky. I was raised dirt poor. That is a mild improvement over where we started. Daily life was an absolute struggle. I ate one meal a day at school. Everything I owned was second-hand or older. I had no mattress and slept on the floor with a thin blanket. That was poverty. My luck began in 7th grade when a librarian introduced me to the audiovisual archives at the library. That led to my falling in love with opera. My freshman English teacher encouraged me to come out of my shell and offered a lot of extra credit to participate in the school talent show. She probably expected me to read a poem, but I performed a ribald version of "I've Got a Little List" from the Mikado. The choir teacher saw my performance and urged me to audition for choir. I relented and went to the audition intending to bomb so he would stop, but I exceeded his expectations. He suspected that, with proper guidance, I could become a professional. He invited a friend to watch rehearsals. The friend, a professional tenor with a local opera company, needed less than one audition to offer to mentor me. He also wanted to sponsor me for the company's internship and understudy training program, a talent development program. I accepted. Due to oddities in state law, I could not legally be an employee until I was 16, but I had to receive some compensation to be covered by the company's insurance. I was listed as a compensated volunteer. For the first 5 months, I was paid in tickets for shows, which I sold at face value each week. I was happy with $300 a week, given where I came from. The company's board was less than enthusiastic about keeping my pay below their minimum. They wanted me on the payroll quickly, so they gave me my first birthday party at 16. I signed my employment agreement at 1 minute past midnight on my 16th birthday. After I signed, the chief financial officer slipped me an envelope with my back pay, the difference between the company minimum and what I had received over the previous 19 weeks. The company minimum wage was $2,760 a week. It was an enormous windfall, and I had trouble accepting it. I splurged briefly, but it felt hollow, so I asked my mentor how to make the money work for me. He suggested day trading. I had never heard of it, so he explained. Before diving in, I simulated trades by tracking price changes over several weeks. I had a knack for predicting market fluctuations. I ran into a problem. I could not open a day trading account because of my age. My mentor opened one for me, and I began putting extra money into day trading. By 18, I had enough to invest meaningfully in an index mutual fund. Those income streams became the basis of my income. All of this is pure, unadulterated luck. Story 11. On behalf of my spouse, she worked exceptionally hard, harder than anyone I have ever met. That comes from being raised on a farm. She deserves every penny. Story 12. I did not grow up in poverty. I was just poor. Background. My parents still live in government-subsidized housing. We never went hungry, but my parents never had money to save. They sometimes had to take withdrawals from one credit card to pay off another. They are 58 and almost finished paying off debt they had 20 years ago. My brother and I helped. How I changed my life. My parents immigrated to Canada in the 1990s. All I needed to do was integrate into my new culture while respecting the one I came from and study hard. We never really had much, but we never went hungry. People around me did not care that I wore the same clothes every day. I studied hard, went to university, and built a career. I was always grateful, even though we did not have money, because I lived in a country where my family's financial status did not determine who I would become. Luck is an important factor. Hard work by itself is nothing if you are plagued by bad luck. I was fortunate to be relatively healthy, to have 2 loving parents who always stuck together, to grow up in a nonviolent neighborhood, and to be in a country where you can make your own opportunities. In many countries, it is very difficult to escape and overcome the status of your parents. In Canada, people did not look down on my family and me for being poor. Ironically, the people who did look down on us were other affluent Koreans who had also immigrated to Canada. I expected the wealthier Korean immigrants would help us integrate into Canadian society, but in reality they distanced themselves. It was actually Canadians who knew nothing about Korean culture who embraced us. Anyway, I reached a six-figure salary when I was 27. All it took was some luck and diligence in my studies, not studying 10 hours a day every day for 10 years, but taking the time to study for homework and tests. Story 13. I started my own company while I was in university. I developed software that is very popular with corporations. It helped that I had programmed my first game when I was 8. Story 14. I went to college and chose information technology as my major because I enjoyed working with computers. I now work for a software as a service company, and because I understand the technology and work well with customers, I earn approximately $165,000 per year. Story 15. I got lucky. I did not work any harder than anyone else I know, but things worked out in a way that benefited me. I met my wife, and our dual incomes allowed us to buy this home in 2017, fortunately before things became far more expensive. Story 16. I grew up in the projects around New Orleans. I had athletic and academic potential, but the hard part was not getting pulled back into the crab barrel. Many people did not want me to succeed. Then I went off to college on scholarships but with no money. I felt lost, had no friends or direction, and did not know how to navigate my life, but I loved math. Differential equations, numerical analysis, and graduate-level economics were all easy for me. New friends noticed my work ethic and helped support me until I got on my feet. 2 engineering degrees later, I got an opportunity to break the we're broke cycle, and after 33 years in the oil and gas industry, I own 2 homes, with my elderly parents living in one of them. The key is to buy Toyota trucks. Laugh out loud. No, seriously, you buy one and you have no issues. You throw the money saved by driving that old truck into your mortgage. It has been a long, hard ride, but education and hands-on sink or swim direction from a pack of rednecks. Cajun tough love brought me here. I am extremely tired. They threw me to the wolves offshore and did not help me. I had to learn everything through mistakes, face threats of being fired and performance improvement plans, but I fought through it. I have been the only black engineer and manager at almost every job I've had. Notice to men, no one is coming to save you. Get off your ass and do something with your life. Only your mother will love you unconditionally. You have to be a useful provider to be valued and appreciated as a man. Set goals, stick to them, work and grind through the challenges. Establish your path in life, and protect the women in your life to the utmost. Story 17. I chose a blue-collar path. I had just graduated high school and worked my way through the auto trade. I became a pump mechanic and now make a good living. The key was not being afraid of change. I worked at 6 dealerships. The work was similar, but some shops paid more. I kept looking for better opportunities and found something I love to do, and the pay is good. Story 18. I am a dentist and grew up in abject poverty. I panhandled and lived in a car and on the street. My late mother instilled in me the importance of education as a way out of dire straits. I vowed that I would never have to choose between paying rent and buying food, and I never want my child to have to sell their only video game to afford gas. I reject that. Education was my way out, and I used it. No matter what, I will never live on the street again. Story 19. I married well, which got me a house with land that I never would have been able to afford. Before that, I earned a degree and put in the effort like everyone else. When I was a child, a degree and hard work were enough to buy a modest bungalow. But by the time I reached adulthood, that dream was fading fast. I continue to work hard as a stay-at-home mom with an online business that is finally taking off. Story 20. Military service allowed me to get a decent job when I left. Night school, reimbursed by my employer, helped me obtain a better position. Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees helped me obtain even better positions. All of this happened while I was not drinking and partying with my old friends. Story 21. A genetic gift of intelligence made school relatively easy, but caused a lifelong struggle with procrastination. Random luck in stumbling into the right college major. I learned the importance of my credit score when my father complained about how my mother ruined theirs. I avoided early marriage. After observing the chaos of my older brother's first marriage, I focused on college classes and avoided the buffoonery other students engaged in. I married much later to a woman with a career. I did not have children. And finally, I lucked into a cushy corporate job that has been stable for over a decade. Nothing is as motivating as extreme poverty. When you have to bathe using a pot of hot water because your family could not afford to fix a broken water heater, when you have to scrub your clothes in the bathtub because you cannot afford the laundromat, or when you are up all night battling flying cockroaches in your room, you take that personally. Story 22. Summary. I grew up very poor. The Marines served me well both during and after my service and set me up for a great future. Qualifications. I grew up collecting cans and paper, taking them to the recycling center every day to pay for meals that night. I spent time sleeping in the back seat of our old car, in a tent at a campground until we were kicked out, and then in someone's backyard so I could attend school nearby. After high school, I joined the Marines and my single father passed away during boot camp. I did well on the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, entered military intelligence, and later joined teams, which shattered the imposter syndrome I had faced for most of my life. When I left the Marines, a recruiter set me up with a college fund that nearly doubled the standard tuition assistance. It helped a lot, but it still was not enough to cover college, room, and board. I took a job at a trucking company as a casual worker. If I showed up and worked hard, I would be called back for more shifts, which was a huge life lesson. I learned that by taking overtime and working doubles, I could work a couple of days a week and be set. It taught me to push myself for what I wanted. When I chose my college focus, I deliberately selected a profession that was in high demand and paid well. I researched college job listings, saw what was needed, and took that path. My first through 10th information technology jobs benefited from the 3 years I spent working the trucking docks. Everyone said I was the hardest worker they had ever seen. I focused on following the money, something I never had growing up, and changed jobs every couple of years for higher pay, to refine my career, and to build my resume. While I now make $200,000 to $300,000 every year, I feel like I have lost much of that drive. I have achieved a level of success, but I have also spoiled my children and my wife and spent an awful amount of money I did not need to along the way. Story 23. I left home as soon as I could and worked whenever possible. I asked for help to learn things I was never taught, such as basic cleaning, hygiene, and social skills, and I worked on myself. I found my passion and continued working toward my dream job and goals. I live in a nice house that is a rental but keeps me and my family warm. It has enough rooms and beds for everyone who lives here and a fenced yard for my children to play in, and I am proud of it. Story 24. I joined the Army when I was 17 and started going to school. I did not stop until I had 5 degrees. I took jobs others would not do and went places others would not go. Now things are pretty cushy. Story 25. I joined the Air Force and stayed long enough to earn 4 degrees and retire. I moved into the middle class. Story 26. Cut out toxic people in your life and focus on yourself. Don't see failure as an end but as a redirection. Be kind, patient, and reliable to those who matter to you. Story 27. College was beyond my reach despite being academically qualified. I enlisted in the military for a job I knew could provide a future and never looked back. Story 28. I earned a computer science degree from a public university, worked for a few years, and paid off my student loans. Then I was offered a job in San Francisco and relocated from Texas. That is when my career really took off and my income improved significantly. Story 29. I left my hometown, got an education, and stayed out of trouble. Story 30. I grew up incredibly poor. We were homeless several times when I was too young to understand our extended camping trips. My parents experienced a combination of bad luck and repeated poor decisions. Unlike some, education was not originally my salvation. At 18, I graduated from high school and got a job at a local manufacturing plant. I stayed for about 16 years until the plant closed. During that time, I worked my way up from an entry-level position to the third highest position in the building. I asked many questions, learned from peers, and researched ways to improve processes. I became the go-to employee for many tasks and moved into leadership roles, first leading small teams, then larger teams, and finally multiple teams across departments. The turning point was receiving formal titles. Once I became a supervisor and then a manager, it was easier to find well-paying positions. When my plant closed, I went to another manufacturing plant and was able to start there as a supervisor with a respectable salary. From there, I advanced internally to a technical and engineering position. While at the new company, I earned my associate's degree to strengthen my resume, and I began taking night classes toward a bachelor's degree. Throughout my career progression, I was very frugal. I had roommates to split bills and avoided extravagance. I have since helped many people advance from entry-level jobs to salaried positions in manufacturing. I believe manufacturing offers many opportunities for internal advancement. This method will not work for everyone, but it worked for me. If I could change anything, I would have earned my associate's degree earlier so my resume would have been stronger when the facility closed, which was a major limitation in finding employment. Story 31. I decided to learn and read everything I could. After I left my mother's house, I learned how to fix computers and how to use a computer to type everything that needed to be delivered. I joined the army to address problems I had since childhood. With enough confidence, I applied for a job that became my main source of income while I kept a side job fixing computers. By the age of 30, I had bought my own place, but it took about 20 years of very hard work, little free time, and some lost relationships because of my workload. Story 32. In the military, supervision insisted on attending college, maintaining physical fitness, and socializing with coworkers in person. It helped. Story 33. I worked my way up through education and accepted low-paying jobs in the 1980s and early 1990s. When unemployment was high, I could not go to university after school, so I started in a low-level position. Through steady learning and some luck, I was later able to attend university, go abroad, start a business, and experience further good fortune. Story 34. Develop habits that promote good health and discipline. Avoid excesses in eating and drinking, and avoid dangerous activities that could derail your career. Talk to people working in the career you want. Start reading books, research careers that pay well, and set a goal for the education that will get you a job, allowing you to develop skills that make you unique. Story 35. Mine is the reverse. I went to private school and had a lovely house with maids. Then it all came crashing down because of my dad's bad business deals. I was a spoiled kid and had to learn to be independent and domestic out of necessity. There were days I would not eat to make ends meet. I live in a small 2-bedroom rental with a roommate. My name is on the main lease. I like that it is simple, small, and easy to clean and manage. I still live paycheck to paycheck, but I like the simplicity of life and I am trying to be smarter with my finances and career. We still own the old mansion from my childhood. I recently went home. My dad still lives there. He is doing okay on his retirement income and has a caregiver and a driver to help him. Do I miss my old pampered life? Yes. But would I prefer living in a house as big as the one I grew up in? Not really. It would be nice to have a decent-sized closet compared to my small rental, but I want to live modestly. Any extra money I have I prefer to save for retirement and medical needs because healthcare in California is costly. Story 36. I went to a government-run college in India to study electrical engineering because it was inexpensive. I immigrated to the United States and now work in technology as a technical program manager. Story 37. Education. Never stop learning. Place yourself in situations where you can learn while using the knowledge you already have. Story 38. I'm a try-hard and like proving people wrong. I also have a great wife who encourages my growth and stands by my side. For context, I'm not rich, but to young me, I'm balling out of control. Story 39. Gain a skill set that is in demand and network extensively. Take every opportunity you can. I joined the military at 20. While serving, I worked in the information technology field. I received training, gained experience, and earned veteran status. That opened many doors. I networked everywhere I went. I have friends around the world who often contact me about job opportunities. People remembered me because I was professional. I worked hard and was reliable, so they are willing to associate their name with my referrals. This is not meant as boasting. The point is to always do your best, stay positive in the workplace, and build connections. People will notice and remember you. In short, Gain a skill set, seize opportunities, be flexible, and build connections. Story 40. I took very hard, bold, and risky decisions. First, I traveled abroad alone at 18 to become an exchange student sponsored by a family. Years later, back in my country, I left my parents and siblings to attend university far from my hometown with almost no money. A little later, I followed my instinct and left university before graduation to take a job that became my entire hardworking 40-year career. Each of these steps was a building block for my present comfortable life, which has offered my family and me an exciting life of diverse experiences and adaptation. I have lived in 6 countries and visited dozens of others on different continents for work and tourism. Story 41. What helped me were luck, motivation to be better, realizing who I did and did not need around me, moving away, hard work, and sacrifice. The basic story is that as soon as I got my trade certificate, I packed up everything I owned, put it in my car, and headed to the mines. I worked very hard in my early 20s and did some demanding rosters. I set myself up enough to work 1 week on, 1 week off, and now I get to take it easier and spend more time with my wife and kids. Do not be afraid of change, and be aware of toxic people and relationships. That includes parents and longtime friends. Story 42. I make a conscious effort every day not to become a train wreck like everyone else in my family. Breaking cycles requires a lot of practical and emotional work. It is often exhausting, but seeing my life improve every day keeps me on the path. I ended up in a life that nobody expected for me, so now I am proving that I deserve everything I have. Story 43. Can I add to the question? For those who have a nice house and a good job, has that made you as happy as you expected? Sometimes I wonder if it is not as great as I imagine. Update. The replies are extremely encouraging. I guess my fear is that I am too used to how and where I grew up. I hear gunshots in my neighborhood at night, and even when there are none, I still imagine them in my dreams. The replies suggest this can change and that if I move to a better place, although it might take time, my brain can return to normal. Story 44. First, you must completely believe in yourself. You can do it. Build your grit and resilience. Education is the most important. I worked 3 jobs and put myself through college while getting divorced and raising my children. I did not always make the easy choices, but I made the right ones. I have an excellent job with a good salary and I paid off my mortgage early. Do what is hard now for long-term reward, not what is easy now for short-term gain. I still live near where I grew up, partly due to circumstance. It is a constant reminder of where I came from, and I have a healthy fear of returning to poverty. I am not going back. Story 45. I stopped spending money on unnecessary things and set a monthly budget to put money aside. Story 46. I joined the Marines and, after I got out, put my experience and benefits to good use. I received a free bachelor's degree, a free law degree, and an excellent interest rate on a very large house. Took 8 years of my life after high school. Story 47. I have a master's degree and military experience. I set myself up with backup options to avoid being poor. Story 48. I joined the Army and continued my education while working in industry until my 30s. I set up 2 companies in my 40s and 50s. I was helped by a bit of luck along the way. Story 49. I went back to night school when I was 26 and graduated the next year as an entry-level programmer. I worked hard, attending classes at night while working full-time. After I was hired, I often worked 60 to 80 hours a week, though I was paid for 40. I learned which parts of the applications were most critical and focused my efforts on them. I became a critical member of the organization. Story 50. After 4 years in the United States Army, the service paid for nursing school. Story 51. I dumped my boyfriend. I joined the Army and got away from small-town life. I left the Army, earned 2 degrees, and I am generally excellent at my job. Story 52. I joined the military and later took a job in the defense industry. Story 53. Education does not necessarily mean college. It could be trade or technical school or on-the-job training or apprenticeship, but there has to be a goal followed by a plan for how to get there. cannot be some menial job that you work hard at for years and hope something good happens. Story 54. I took chances that pushed me out of my comfort zone, which I would say was the biggest force multiplier for me. I grew up in a very economically depressed area in the northeast of the United States. I was on and off welfare as a child in a single-parent home. My dad did the best he could with what he had. He pushed me to make sure I finished high school, which was a big deal for that time and place, and I have been eternally grateful. If he had not, I probably would have ended up in the same city where I was born. I am 51 now and only recently went back to school and earned an associate's degree this past year while my own children are in college. I will be working toward a bachelor's degree over the next few years. Taking chances and leaving my comfort zone succeeded far more often than it failed. After high school, I joined the Marines, where I matured quickly and learned to push through hard times. I met my wife while serving and we married a few years later. After I separated from the military, I applied for positions I was not sure I could do, and I accepted jobs in states I had only flown over before. One time I applied for a position at the company I worked for that was 5 states away, rented a place online without ever seeing it, left work on Friday in one state and showed up at the new position on Monday. I was always preparing to make the next step in my career, whether getting a new certification or learning a new skill in my downtime. If you do not take chances, it is much harder to make significant progress in my experience. Another thing that worked for us was not being fixed on who was the breadwinner. There were times when my wife's career was taking off, so we moved and made decisions based on her needs. When mine was doing well, we focused on that. In summary, take chances, get out of your comfort zone often, and work as true partners if you have a partner. Story 55. It took decades, one win at a time. You make one good choice at a time and stick with it until the things you did right add up to stability. Story 56. I grew up very poor. My mother worked 3 jobs, and we lived in a town where no one did much. I was not good in school and the outlook was bleak. I joined the army because I had no other options. It taught me discipline and a confidence I did not have before. Because of veterans' education benefits, I got into college and began a normal life track after school, although I still struggled. On a whim, I moved across the country. I met new people, made friends, and attended a trade school. I got a job in a warehouse and was just getting by. Later, I sold insurance, but it did not feel like a fit. A friend told me his company needed a new sales representative. I applied and got the job. Fast forward. I now live in a large house and earn more than $150,000 a year. I believe persistence, education, a willingness to try new things despite fear, and a great deal of luck got me here. Story 57. As a small child, I thought it was odd that people had to have jobs. It was a foreign concept, and it still is. I am not rich. I rent a modest apartment in a rural area and make art. I would make art regardless, but sales support my lifestyle, so some may call it work. It is work, and I enjoy working hard. But I do not work for someone else just to make them richer. Who would fall for that scam? Story 58. I was an ugly duckling who did not become attractive until my late teens. If I had been pretty at 15 or 16, it is likely that I would have been victimized in some form. Because I was the weird, awkward kid, I was left alone until I was old enough to have some sense, and then my attractive face opened a lot of doors for me in late high school and college. Story 59. Well, I lost my good job due to medical reasons, but before that I got where I am largely through luck and a willingness to say, fuck it. It can't be worse than now. I wish I had a more logical or inspiring tale, but I've basically stumbled, grifted, and cheated my way here. College did not work, trades did not work, and for fuck's sake, trying to join the local organized crime did not work. It was luck and the mindset that you only live once. Story 60. Education, dedication, and the ability to save like a church mouse make it possible to buy a new car and a house. Story 61. I broke ties with everything that connected me to that life, including my family, and never looked back. I stayed out of trouble and loved them from a distance. I knew I could not share my goals with anyone I knew growing up. I just pursued them and kept going. I worked hard, never asked those people for advice, and never let anyone know my next moves. I built relationships away from my hometown, even if only a town over, and when or if I needed help, those were the people I asked. I wanted to know exactly how they did everything. I was the person serving lunch to a chief executive officer and asking for an application to their company. I looked for opportunities away from my hometown. I never dated anyone who knew people from my past. I listened more than I spoke. I would commute 2 hours for a low-paying job and was homeless at times, sleeping in lecture halls or couch surfing with college friends. I would do it the same way again. I am considered highly successful by some, but I still fear that it will all disappear one day. I was not afraid to fail because trying was better than remaining content with nothing. People may think negatively of you. Some will be jealous. Where I come from, that can be deadly. My hard boundaries ensured my success and survival. In my adult life, I remain very private and keep things compartmentalized. That is how I maintain my peace. Story 62. I received a good education, left religion, and distanced myself from my family. I grew up in a double-wide mobile home with a dysfunctional family. My father is serving a life sentence in prison. Now I am the lead analyst at a billion-dollar company. Story 63. I worked one full-time job and 2 part-time jobs for more than 20 years. I only had 1 day off. Story 64. 4 principles. 1. Living below my means. 2. Education. 3. Investing regularly over my 25-year career. 4. Driving the same vehicle for almost 30 years. Until I inherited my father's car, I had owned 2 cars in 34 years. Car payments and debt are killers of investment returns. Pay cash and invest the interest. I worked very hard through college and took 7 years to finish a 4-year degree, but I graduated without debt. For my master's degree, I had paid internships that paid well. I finished college just before age 30, with time off for 3 internships. Those internships set me on my career path. Living below my means allowed me to save and invest. I maxed out my 401k retirement plan and put as much as I could comfortably afford into a brokerage account, mostly Standard & Poor's index funds. I encountered a financial setback that set me back a bit, but I also benefited from luck when an employer's stock did better than expected. Saving and investing while working let me take care of my aging father and continue investing. When he passed away, I worked for a few more years until I reached my target and decided to quit. My father was never good with money. I helped him fix everything in the house when he needed it. New heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, a safer car, a new bed, a replacement water heater with greater capacity, new floors, appliances, doors, and general repairs. I re-landscaped the outside so I could walk around the perimeter without stepping in mud. I replaced dry rot, fixed leaky faucets, added light-emitting diode lights, installed cameras, replaced hoses and windows, repaired gutters, and addressed other deferred maintenance. None of this would have been possible without the 4 principles. My investments continue to fund repairs and improvements, pay the mortgage, and cover unfinished work without worrying about how to pay for it or having to sell the house to a flipper for a pittance. I miss my father every day, but because I saved, lived below my means, and invested in the markets for 25 years, it will be okay. My father grew up with parents from the Depression era. He understood saving but never understood investing. Investing is simple. Even though I lived through the lost decade between 1996 and 2008 and the financial crisis, I still did fine. Avoiding debt was key. I still need to pay off my father's mortgage, but once that is done, my cash flow requirements will drop. My biggest expense will be healthcare until Medicare begins. Budgeting is important to understand requirements and risk. If I did not believe investment returns could support me, I would not have retired. That required a clear view of fixed and variable costs, long-term and short-term needs, and regular and one-off expenses. I budgeted and forecasted with adequate wiggle room and flexibility to reduce spending if needed. It is all risk, but a calculated risk made after data gathering, conservative projections, and downward adjustments. Some of this I learned in school. Most I figured out for myself. Information is available on YouTube for those who do not want to learn the hard way. Many people do not respect information gained too easily, so those who could benefit most often ignore it. Story 65. I fought like an animal while presenting myself as a person. Story 66. For most people who pulled this trick, being born between 1945 and 1965 was their biggest advantage. Story 67. I ran away and forged my own path. It was hard, but so worth it. It still is. Story 68. First in my family to attend college, I used student loans and earned a doctorate. I worked very hard for more than 25 years while raising a family. I moved across the country to a vacation destination. Now I am coasting toward very early retirement. I pay more in income taxes than I once thought I could earn in salary. I am thankful every day, not for the money but for the life it has afforded me. I achieved this through resilience and have earned the benefits that came with it, especially an appreciation for it all. Story 69. Step 1. Stop copying what your neighbors are doing and ignore whatever they say is popular. The amount of money you will save between the ages of 15 and 25 will be more than enough for a house down payment. Step 2. Learn to fix things. A few $100s here and there add up over a lifetime of not knowing how to fix things. Unless you are very wealthy, you should not own a house if you cannot fix anything. Many people in poor countries lack access to education. What makes one poor person become homeless while another becomes a wealthy landlord is the choices they make. You can learn carpentry and masonry from the world's greatest handyman, who lost both his hands to a machete gang, or you can learn to pickpocket from the town's most notorious thief, who was not actually very good. It should be an obvious choice, but the old man has never kept an apprentice for more than a few days, while the thief has 30 young men around him at all hours, even though none of them are better off than when they first met him. Story 70. I went into the trades in plumbing. I'm not a baller now, but I'm miles ahead of how I was raised. Story 71. Surround yourself with people who are better than you. If you only spend time with people who live the same lifestyle and are stagnant, you will never move forward. Be with people you can learn from and network with, and watch opportunities come. Story 72. I would like to say education, but that would not necessarily be true. I was an Irish immigrant to the United Kingdom in the 1980s. My family were extremely poor. We had to start from scratch. We lived in a council flat in a rough area and literally had to sit on a cold floor because we had no furniture for quite a while. We had hand-me-down trainers and clothes. I decided that secondary education would lift me up, so I aimed for college or university and studied graphic design and art. I left university and struggled to get a job. The work in that field was drying up. I had a stint working for a children's book publisher, but it did not last. I had rent to pay, so I took a warehouse job and enjoyed it, but it paid very little. I finally decided to get a job in the local authority and worked my way up. I am not saying I am rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I am the only one of my siblings who owns their own property and I could not ask for more. My wife and I do not have children, which also helps. I am very grateful overall. So I guess what really got me out of poverty was not settling for where I was and being willing to change and adapt when things did not go as planned. I am not in my dream job, but I am living my dream life. Story 73. My parents were dirt poor. In 1979, they purchased land out east on Long Island. Since then, the local real estate market has exploded. My father had a stroke 12 years ago and must live in a nursing home. My mother is bedridden, and I care for her. Because of their real estate purchases, I now own the house where I care for my mother and do not have a mortgage. I rent out rental units with separate entrances during the warm season and handle all the cleaning and maintenance myself. I am a former chef and sommelier who worked in restaurants and hotels for 2 decades. Story 74. Through self-education and 12 to 14 hours of work, 6 days a week, in rain, snow, and sun, I worked my way up from shoveling in the cargo holds of seagoing vessels to owning several vessels and working as a broker and ship operator. I was very poor. Now I have a somewhat good life. Story 75. Higher education, followed by both physical and emotional distancing from my roots. Story 76. Worked my way through college as a stripper, got a job, and saved up to buy a rundown house in a bad neighborhood. I paid extra on the mortgage, sold it, and bought the next fixer-upper in a better neighborhood, renting out the old one for income. I went back to school for a master's degree at 47 and got a better job. I sold the rental when my daughter turned 18 to help pay for her college. I always paid cash for an old car instead of taking on car payments. I still live in the fixer-upper with some rooms unfinished but am content with my life. Story 77. I will stop blaming others for my problems and fix them myself. Story 78. I came from nothing, from a third world country. We were very poor in the United States. My father's side of the family seems to have a trait. Everyone is very sharp and intelligent. This is important because I never fit in high school or college. I dropped out due to social mistreatment. One thing I loved was computing. I taught myself systems engineering and am now reasonably established. My family says it is common for us to come from nothing and become something. My father's side of the family is established in different countries, depending on their specialties. The moral is to never stop learning and to never give up. You only lose when you give up. Good luck. Story 79. Show a strong work ethic. Do not miss work unless you have a very good reason. And do not say that something is not in your job description. Saying that is the surest way to show management you have reached your limit. 80% of my skills developed because I was asked to do tasks outside my job description or to take on more responsibility. If a task required training, I would ask the company to provide it. Never turn down free training. Story 80. I worked every day at a coffee shop and did my best. Eventually, after about 2 years, a customer noticed my effort and gave me an opportunity. I have been in that industry for 12 years. I have been married and a homeowner for 7 years. My mother could not work because she had 3 children, so we were on social assistance. Having seen what that was like, I did not want that for myself, so I made sure to succeed through honest effort. Story 81. Pay attention in school and aim to be the smartest person in the room. Standardized tests matter more than grades. Work in fields that are very boring and require specialized knowledge. They almost universally pay well. If you are good at math, consider actuarial science. Actuaries often start after undergraduate study with salaries higher than most lawyers and can have more money than God in 10 to 15 years. I am bad at math, but computers are good at it, so I went to law school. The work I do is boring, tedious, and of interest only to those who directly benefit from it. However, it is extremely lucrative, about $500 per hour, with $25,000 per year in expenses outside payroll for a paralegal I do not strictly need but who allows me to work less. My admittedly older Porsche was wrecked by the accountant down the hall, and I replaced it with a newer Mercedes-Benz convertible. Date and marry well. Nothing will harm your future faster than having children with the wrong person. Your relationships define your social circles for both good and ill. Your spouse will have a social circle and family you would otherwise never access. That can open doors you did not know existed. Can also close doors that were once open. Develop an interest in the hobbies and culture of wealth. Know how to discuss art and business news, and become part of a community of interest. I hate golf but love fast cars, so I attend many automotive events. Some people play golf. Others enjoy outdoor activities. Some are involved with horses. The price of admission to a polo match, a concours show, a gala, a fundraiser, and so on can be shockingly low. Learn the culture you aspire to. Wear a watch but not a Rolex daily. Rolexes are for when you arrive, not when you start. Wear a Seiko or an Apple Watch. You can tell the quality of a shoe by the sound it makes when it hits the floor. Rubber soles are for sneakers only. Clients who are referred to you are the highest priority. Quality will increase over time. Own a business. You will make far more as an owner than you ever will as an employee. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.